Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us. In this segment, we're going to have a conversation with Keri Cooper. She's a licensed clinical social worker and owner of Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy. She's joining us to talk about her new book, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. This book is designed to give parents steps on how to improve their child's mental health. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Keri Cooper. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I mentioned that you're an LCSW and also the owner of Keri Cooper Holistic. Give us a brief look into your background. Tell us a bit about yourself, and then let's talk about your book.
Sure. I'm a holistic therapist, and I have a private practice in Bergen County, New Jersey, where I specialize just really with children, teens, and young adults. And a lot of people, their first question is, what is a holistic psychotherapist? So I was traditionally trained as a therapist. And through my, years of work, I realized that we're missing a puzzle piece. We're really missing talking about the physical aspect of mental health, how our diet, how exercise, how our sleep all contributes to mental health. So I take a much more holistic view of mental health, more than just the symptoms. I'm also asking my clients, what is your screen time? How much are you outside? What is your diet looking like? Are you exercising? Because those are really the foundations. And in my book, Mental Health Uncensored, I talk about those physical foundations as well, because that's really the building blocks for good mental health. So in my practice, I really take a holistic view to treat the whole person.
Is that the thing that separates holistic medicine from traditional medicine, simply asking questions or delving deeper into a person's activities, social life?
Absolutely. It's looking deeper. It's looking broader. It's not just looking, if somebody has a heart issue when they go into a doctor, not just talking about what their symptoms are of that heart issue, but, what is going on in their life that also may be contributing to that. And I think many times, both in the mental health field and the physical health field, we're not taking that broader approach to really look at how our lifestyle is impacting our mental and physical health.
Holistic psychotherapy, is it easier with children as opposed to adults, because children are, young, they don't have the biases, they don't have some of the experiences that adults have?
I think sometimes it's easier because they haven't been set in their ways for so long. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's easier to make some changes and some movements. Mm-hmm. And I also think that now as a society, these kids in school are learning about mental health. They are learning about proper diet and exercise, not to the extent where they need to be, but they are hearing it. So this isn't, a strange concept for them. And I think, maybe for some older generations, it's harder to understand how food is really impacting mental health. But I think for the younger ones, they kind of get it. And they also get really excited when they start realizing that a lot of this is in their control, that they have the power to really take control of how they're feeling. And I think that's empowering for them.
Your book, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. When it comes to getting involved or trying to help your child with their mental health, how much of a barrier is our own adulthood to that assistance?
Oh, that's such a great question. It is such a barrier. I think that parents sometimes just feel like, well, everyone's gone through something, just shake it off, it's fine. And they don't really understand what it's like for their kids to be in this moment of feeling, helpless or feeling just so depressed. I don't think parents fully understand. And I also don't think that they understand how times have really changed. This is not how it was, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. When you introduce social media into this game, it's a whole nother level. And these kids are really struggling because of it. Their entire life is basically out on display constantly. And that's a lot of pressure.
What about the issue of trust between the generations when it comes to receiving help from someone who's so much older? Is that an issue? And does your book, Mental Health Uncensored, address that?
That definitely can be an issue. Mm-hmm. I think it's more about, does the older generation understand, what's going on with the younger generation.
Okay.
And I think if there's that understanding, then they get it and they're able to trust and understand and have an open dialogue.
If suicide is the second leading cause of death among college-age students, is anxiety, obviously, I guess pressure and anxiety would increase from kindergarten through elementary through high school, and then, of course, in college because you're getting ready to prepare yourself for the world. Is it anxiety and stress of the academics, or are there oftentimes other underlying things that have nothing to do with the stress of academia?
I definitely think some of it is, just stress in academics, but the other aspect is learning to live independently. And I think sometimes these kids are almost overly sheltered and they don't develop coping skills and they don't have the confidence in themselves that they can solve problems. Unfortunately, parents at times are doing too much, and I talk about that in the book as well, because we're not letting our children take risks. We're not allowing them to fail in a safe environment and build themselves back up. So now they're in college and, they're supposed to be these independent creatures, but they're not used to problem solving. They're not used to hitting a wall and trying to figure out a solution to get around it. They're used to kind of just turning to parents and saying, okay, help. And the parents just jumping in instead of really explaining it to them and working it through with them. So I think that's a huge piece of it. And I think, the other issue that we forget about is as these children are growing up, many times they're overscheduled. Many times there's this constant, we're working towards college. We're working towards the next moment of our life, not really being able to appreciate the here and now. And then they get to college and they're like, okay, I did all this work and here I am, and I'm not very happy. Mm-hmm. What's wrong? So I think there's a lot of, identity crisis happening in college. I think there's a lot of what is kind of the purpose of life at this point. And it's a big adjustment for these kids.
Does the need and urge and the activity of fitting in at any cost, being responsible for, I guess, what other people feel about you and think about you, is that a huge part of some of the mental distress that our teens are experiencing?
Absolutely. And some of that is somewhat normal. We're social creatures and we are meant to live in groups. So that, especially growing up, you are meant to worry about what other people are thinking about you. That's very normal to a degree. I think the other issue, though, where we've kind of tipped the scales is that now kids are very concerned about how they are making other people feel. Mm. And really, it's to a fault because these kids are not putting their needs first. They're too afraid of disappointing somebody else. And that's actually another topic that we talk about in this book, that kids need to be able to put up boundaries and to take care of themselves. And as parents, we need to model that behavior and not put our needs last and try and take care of everybody else first. Wow, it's like the oxygen mask. You have to put it on yourself first.
That's one aspect that I had not really thought of. I mean, I have kids, but I never thought about the fact that they were maybe worried about disappointment in another direction.
Yeah,
you always think
that's actually one of the biggest issues I see currently. Mm-hmm.
So basically, you're telling children not to be responsible for the feelings of others if you're not involved?
What I'm trying to explain to these kids is that, we always need to be kind and we always need to be a good friend, but we are not responsible for somebody else's entire happiness. If we can't go out one night because we have homework to do, we have to be able to say no to a friend, even though they may be disappointed. We need to put our needs first.
How do you get a teenager, a young adult, to concentrate, sit still, clear their mind long enough to engage in anything even close to meditation?
That's a great question. A lot of the kids come into my office and are like, I can't meditate. I don't have the patience for this. So sometimes how we'll start instead is doing a mindfulness walk where I'll have them walk outside, without their phone and just look at nature. Think of what you hear. Think of what you smell. Think of what you see and make it more active. And you're still getting a great benefit because really the goal of meditation is to be in the here and now. And other times, I'll tell them to do a progressive muscle relaxation, which is more active as well. And, tightening and releasing muscles in your body. Mm-hmm. And then they build up to a meditation. And it's really nice for them to be able to have that time for themselves and to take a break kind of from their crazy world and just be able to be silent for a little bit.
Keri, give us a website where our listeners can learn more about you and about your practice.
Sure. It's Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy, and that's Keri CooperHolisticTherapy.com.
Great. Keri, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Lots of great information.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Keri Cooper, licensed clinical social worker and owner of Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.